they were looking at.
This is the July 29th, 2026 meeting of the Municipal Building Blue Ribbon Committee. I'll call the roll. Councillor Cook was going to attend by Zoom. I can. Okay. Councillor Bagley is not here. Renee?
Yes,
Plummer?
sir, I'm here.
Welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
Rick Chelman is not here. Sue Sterry?
I'm here.
Former Mayor Peter Weeks.
Here.
Okay. Cameron may be attending by Zoom.
Those might be both of them attending by Zoom.
Hello, everyone.
I think that might be Councilor Cook and Cameron.
Okay. And John O'Leary
We
is
just
not with us.
allowed to talk to make sure that we have those.
Well, sure, Police Commissioner.
Present.
See you. And from staff, we have Carl Weber, Deputy City Manager, Peter Rice, DPW Director, Joe Almeida, Facilities Manager, and from JSA, we have North Sturdivant and blank. Richard Mertz. Good to see you both. Looks like we don't have.
Hi, Councilor Tabor. This is Cameron on Zoom on the 617 number. Sorry, I'm in the car in between other meetings. Otherwise, I have been there in person and stuff.
Hey, Cameron. Good. Glad you're with us.
Yep. Thanks for the flexibility on these islands, Steve.
Yep. Any sign of Councilor Cook?
Councilor Cook, is that you? 502 number?
It's on mute. Oh, it's the ability to unmute. Whoever that number is has the ability to unmute.
First up, we've got review and approval of the meeting minutes.
So move.
A chance to read. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'll
Project-
abstain as I was not present for that meeting.
Okay, thanks, Cameron.
Oh, either was I. I lied.
Sure thing.
We'll refer you to the police department.
Please, thank you.
I'll represent you.
Well, you don't want to say that with all this law enforcement. Project status update, Richard.
And I just want to start,
Carl, you want to tee us off?
just wanted to tee it off with thanking everybody for being part of the work session on July 13th. And for the public's benefit, that meeting is up online, and also the presentation is up online in case they want to view that. I think it's important because it really gives a recap of all the work that had brought us to where we are today. And I think it's important that they know that they can watch the video, but also the presentation itself is up online on the Blue Ribbon Committee site. Today we will, after Richard goes over the sort of project update and where we are with the plans, we will talk a lot about the public feedback process of what we have in store and any other suggestions that you might have. And there's opportunities for you to join us at the farmers market as well. And so we'll put all that out for you today and see if you'd like to be part of that. So with that, we'll let Richard go through the project update so far.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before Richard starts, I had made a request for the chief to report to us today the thoughts of the commission on the plans that, and I would, before we go through,
Yeah,
I'd like to hear from the chief of the commission's and the police department's position on the current plans.
I can report for the commission and let the chief report for the department.
We're on board with where we're at. I feel good with what we have for design at this point. Obviously, there'll be some changes inevitably throughout the project, but I feel that our needs are being met with what is proposed.
From the commission's perspective, I would say that our belief is that this is a good enough proposal for us to support. Obviously there are wants that we think the police department could use, but we can't get everything we want. I think we're good enough. Our concern is that it happened quickly rather than slowly.
Well, that won't happen. It'll be a long process.
I'll still be whining about it happening quickly.
Any consolation, the police portion of it will happen much faster than the bulk of it.
That's correct.
That'll be done first.
It's pretty front loaded, yeah. And I'll just, go ahead.
Will it be easy to do that first?
Well,
Oh, you're being funny. God,
You've been in construction a long time, Renee, you know that.
But I think if you look at the phasing that was proposed, that really makes room to do the PD part first by moving planning, sustainability inspections out of the building. That allows that wing to be rehabilitated for the detectives to move up into and other parts of the police department to move up into. It really does allow for that work to be done first. And so we prioritized getting the operations of the police department done right out of the gate.
And I think as this project moves forward and we start getting to more design and they bring on contract stuff like that, that if we can be inconvenienced for a certain period of time to get the police department done faster, then we would be looking at that rather than drawing this out. So that
will you write that, like, you know, as you're leaving your office, that you just said that?
Well, it's recorded, I'm on record.
That's right.
We'll compromise for progress.
We'll compromise for progress.
Okay.
that's great. And I'll just add that the council work session at the last council meeting, we heard the presentation. I think we never vote at work sessions, we just ask questions and gather information, but the comments were positive. And we also heard from Nathan Lunny, the finance director of the city, about how this would layer in with the city's long-term debt picture. And there was a sense of comfort from that. So, the number we've got is manageable.
Yeah, it seems like we've come a long, long way on that, which is really wonderful to hear. So, yeah, great work to all the actual workers at JSA and elsewhere who are doing the legwork on it. We just didn't
Actual
listen.
workers, hear that?
And the staff that have had to, forecast.
Right, exactly. The staff,
around
the
it.
police department, all these folks, right. This committee isn't doing, these are challenging problems, right? But we're not doing the legwork. We just look at the output of a lot of hours of people's work, and we just want to recognize that. So thanks to everybody who's been putting in their time.
I did a lot
Really, I think the last few meetings, huge progress.
Here.
I did a lot of fake work, so.
Okay, now we'll dive into project update.
Thank you. Just overarching what we've been working on this past month and where we're going, and then updates specifically. The past month, the two main focuses were, one, preparing for the council work session that we spoke about and making sure we could articulate everything we needed to. Separately and behind the scenes, we've been making some plan updates based off further conversations with city staff and further work, as well as flushing out as much detail as we can for our estimators. The big goal that we have right now is the month of August having the current concepts re-estimated so that we can present updated numbers to the committee in September. So we're giving them as much information as we know, as much as we expect to be the case, so that number is as thorough and detailed as we can predict at this point in time, so that we can move forward with confidence. So we are putting together a package for our estimators right now, so they can start re-estimating starting next week.
And you gave them, number 2, sharpened pencils.
Yes.
Bought the pencil sharpener for them as well. Not just the sharpener.
Busting the budget.
So not a huge amount of plan updates for this week, but a couple key ones to bring to your attention. The first and most apparent is around the Sallyport. Since the last meeting, we have shifted it page west an additional 8 feet. If you look at past drawings, you'll see it wasn't offset quite as much from the building. And that really benefits us in a couple of ways. Firstly, it helps us relieve some of the pinch point around the existing drive aisle. As we laid it out on our site survey, we looked at it, out in the parking lot. We think we would have had to adjust the road slightly just to give us enough clearance. By doing this, we avoid having to do that. It feels a little more comfortable, gives sort of the main entry a little more breathing room. And on the other side of it where the drive aisle is, this new location aligns with the one-story bump out that's going to remain. So there's a certain alignment there, and it doesn't impact the work that we'll be needing to do in that area. That's the biggest change. Visually, it's makes a subtle difference, but nothing huge. I'll show you what an update, you can see the updated renderings right here on the side a little bit. The front of the building is as you've seen it before, but this whole sally port slid another 8 feet this way. All it does is leaves a little bit more of the existing corner of the building exposed. But it gives us a little more breathing room in this area, which is going to be the benefit of all of us when we get into construction. We've also
on the plan here, you moved it away from the dotted line?
Sorry, not that. This left side here,
Yeah.
the whole mass has shifted an additional 8 feet.
Okay.
The whole thing. So
Richard, is that
oh,
figure showing?
I was going to talk to that next.
Okay.
I have a quick question too.
Yes.
Does that change how the construction will be done on the backside now?
Not substantially. No, it would still be the same sequencing, same approach. Just the footprint is shifted ever so slightly to.
So there'll be more exposed on the back coming out this way? You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be like a walkout or look like a walkout in the backside.
It would have been that way no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's visually
That's what I meant, yeah.
Visually it's not much of a difference, but logistically it's going to make preserving that existing drive aisle of the parking lot much easier, much more tenable.
Third bullet, could you explain that to me? I just had trouble
Yes,
following
absolutely.
that whole concept of it.
So if you're looking at the screen, this area right here, that zone is the existing police department entrance where the existing storefront is, that little bit of canopy, the blue light, that whole area.
Yeah.
So that structure is a single story bit of construction that was tacked onto the original building as well as the hospital, and then adjusted again for the police department later on. As we think about how we're going to build the basement underneath and get all this to work, what we realize it's going to be much simpler and cleaner to just basically lob that bit of storefront off and rebuild that bit of square footage. So that's why we're showing that all as sort of a bit of new addition, because we'll end up having to demolish and rebuild it, but it's going to make the construction sequencing and stuff much more practical and realistic.
Thank you.
That's, as we look at the plans more and we're spending more time thinking about how this is going to be built, we start to think through more things like that where, okay, how will this actually get built? How is this going to be detailed? What will be the cleanest way to do this? That's one example of that. Similarly, in the basement level, again, small changes in square footage, but things that we're thinking about. This dash line up here reflects the front of the sally port, or the sally port doors really up above. Whereas in the basement, we're going to inset the basement a little bit more. And what that's going to do is make it simpler to build for us. You can imagine how those sally port doors are set back 6 feet on the first floor. Well, that whole area is exposed to exterior. It's going to be asphalt. It's basically exterior space. Why build basement underneath there? Which can be done, but you have to insulate it, waterproof it. It's something that you'll have to maintain, not ideal. Take that 6 feet out of the basement. Now we have a nice clean foundation, much easier to build, easier to maintain and waterproof for a little bit of square footage, but it will simplify our lives greatly.
I mean, that's how you go through the whole thing, saying, okay, what does it cost and what do we gain from it?
Right.
And in this case here, the cost versus what you gain doesn't make sense.
Right. And these things might continue to morph as we get further and further in design, but as we have realizations and start thinking through those things, we try to make those updates as we go so that we're, again, sharpening our pencil and getting more refined in our thinking.
And Peter appreciates that.
The second thing noted, we're going to go over to the side bolt wing now. Zoom in over there. You may recall the existing sidewall wing has a fire escape on the side of the building over here that is in dire need of being completely replaced. In the past, we've always shown building it in essentially the same location. However, the difficulty with that location is there's a large amount of grade difference between our building and the neighbor's property, and the property line is very close. It's a very hard area to work, and actual construction would be quite difficult. So what we're showing is moving that stair around to the back of the building, just the back corner where the parking is. Fundamentally, it doesn't change the square footage all that much, but what that will do is make the construction much, much simpler, because now we're not so close to the neighbors. We're not having to potentially rebuild a fairly tall retaining wall right on the property line. So while square footage costs don't change, when it comes to actual construction estimating and doing, we've made everyone's lives easier and more affordable by doing that. And it's something from a planning standpoint we feel we can accommodate without a problem.
Thank you.
And then we've made just a handful of smaller updates in the tax clerk area. Since we had met previously between now and the month of July, we met with the tax clerk, the registrars, assessing once again, and we've made a handful of smaller updates, moving some offices around, making sure that we have a wellness room right adjacent to the clerk's area. Just a couple little things that ultimately will help improve the plans, and since we had the FaceTime with them, we were able to make those updates and get, again, more refined in our thinking every time we work on the plans. More refined, more refined. I think that really speaks to the meat of the plan updates. Again, nothing huge, but little bits that all improve what we're working on.
Are these cubicles, the 8 by 10?
Yes,
And how high do they go up?
we have not designed that yet. So we're simply allocating space, knowing that we would plan for workstations, but what the design of those workstations will be, high, low, top files, not top files, that's something that gets determined much later on in the process.
I'm just thinking about secrecy, or not secrecy, but just
Privacy.
Right.
privacy. It drives me crazy when, why do you need, I could stay here and just say, well, this is how much, I made, this is how much I'm paying. It's like, where's the privacy? Where can you go someplace and talk to somebody and keep your mouth shut?
We have a few ways we can accommodate that. So firstly, obviously, with the specific departments, we would discuss what their furniture needs are, privacy and storage and considerations like that. From a public standpoint, if you're at the point of service, we could imagine possibly small partitions right at the point of service, similar to like a check-in at a hospital, doctor's office, so you have a little bit of privacy. But let's say you're having a much more private, sensitive conversation.
Yeah.
That's why we have adjacent meeting rooms, so that you can say, do you want, let's go over here, you can close the door and have, whether it's your emotional or it just is sensitive information. That's what those meeting rooms are for, which currently those conversations happen in the hallways, which is not ideal.
I was gonna say.
Well,
go ahead, Cameron.
Kind of on that.
No, I have to go back. The hospitals are the worst place. I've been to so many where, can you tell me
Yeah.
what your blood pressure is and what meds you're on? When everybody's just sort of standing there looking. There is no privacy at all. So please, just make sure whoever you have there understands that. Okay.
Good point. Cameron?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, so.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just have a quick question. I'm just curious, the vestibule, those stairs are gonna be totally widened, just like it looks on here, right? We're gonna get rid of all the little garden and everything that's out there?
We would probably propose to modify that, yeah, like is shown in the renderings where there's a fairly wide grand set of stairs. That would be our intent at this point in time.
And that's just the aesthetic look,
Yes.
or?
That doesn't mean you couldn't introduce planters or
Oh,
do
no, I'm
anything like
just
that,
curious, but this, okay,
Yeah.
thank
but
you.
there's a certain.
Yeah, we'd like the entrance to feel kind of open and welcoming. So
There's gonna be
that is an
handrails.
expression.
Oh, yeah, I think this new look brings us into the 20th century or what have you, and it's not just a group of
Maybe even the 21st.
revolutionary.
21st century.
Yeah, but, it's a good compromise
Yeah.
between the two. I'm just curious.
There we go.
Railings going up all
Oh,
around
yeah,
you.
Oh, yeah.
and ramps.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about this as I was coming in, as we walked down the hallway from the entrance eventually to the city offices there. On the left, there is a room for the registrar of voters.
Yes.
Is that, have we located that somewhere?
Yeah, it's right here.
It's right adjacent to the lobby.
Got it.
And we also met with them about having a meeting room, like if someone was registering, they could, when they have those evening hours, they could come right in and be served
Okay.
right in that meeting room.
Good.
Yeah, we refined that based on our meeting with them.
He didn't know what that technical this was, so if it happens again, he'll come in and,
Someone tried the pair too.
okay.
Okay, other questions?
That's it for the plans. I was gonna give a brief update on engineering, you know, and mechanical, electrical, plumbing, really mechanical primarily. We know one of the biggest things that we need to address with the existing building is the mechanical systems, heating, cooling, ventilation. We've spoken to that in the past a little bit, really the condition of the existing, which is we have a two-pipe system that provides heat in the winter and water in the summer to heat or cool the building accordingly. And the hot water piping runs from the boiler building next door, underneath the front of the building, and into the basement of the police department. And that's all been around, well, that piping's been there since the 60s, and we have a cooling tower on the roof of the building. We've been working with our engineering team and the city to evaluate different approaches and strategies for what the new systems would be, so that we can advise our estimators. And I wanted to give just a brief high-level update on what we're proposing to do. Just please keep everyone updated. Mechanically, that's the biggest work that we need to address. And so what we're looking at doing is a two-part system of perimeter heating. Think about like baseboard heat you might do in your home, a slightly modified version of that. That would be a two-pipe system, as well as air source heat pumps. That does a couple of key things for us. As we looked at the options, one of the biggest things we had to consider is phasing. As you can imagine, as construction's going on, we have to keep the old system going and the new system's online. It's kind of like doing open heart surgery. And this approach led, in a way, I'm not a surgeon, so maybe that's a bad metaphor, but
Pete, you know.
but it's difficult. Of the concepts that lends itself to flexibility and the ability to phase the work, which is of the utmost importance. The efficiency of air source heat pumps is great, and those will use all electricity, which is good for cooling. On the heating side, the benefit of using baseboard perimeter heat during the key winter months or the peak winter months is a few things. Firstly, we'll be able to reuse to a certain extent a lot of the existing fan coil units that exist in the building, the most recent ones that have been replaced. We would have
The newer ones.
the newer ones.
Yeah.
We would have the potential
Replaced this last year.
to reuse some of those. Secondly, one of the things that we've found in the years that our engineers have found is that switching over from gas to electric heat can be much more expensive because electricity is much more expensive. Doing this as our peak heating allows us the ability to do either gas or electric, so we can reuse the existing gas infrastructure for the time being with the piping size that it could switch over to electric when it makes the most operational sense. It lends us some flexibility to balance first costs and operational costs, for the consideration of the city.
Just make sure you take a good look at the council chambers, because that is a difficult thing to have it be warm in the winter and cool in the summer.
And the final solutions might be a mix of this, and we might, some areas might have perimeter heating and air source heat pumps. The cores of the building might just be heat pumps because the peak heating load is really the perimeter of the building where you have all the windows and walls.
Sue?
At the end of all the phases, the boiler room or building out there won't be used at all, everything's gonna be self-contained here?
That would be the intent, yeah. Once we get through all the phases, then we'll be able to take the existing boiler plant in the boiler building offline, and that building could then become available for other uses and purposes for the city.
And my second question is, it would be too much interruption to do the heating system all at once. It would impact
Yes, you have to
every
do it.
day.
You have to do all the heating, cooling, ventilation all at the same time because you'll be, in each space we'll be doing that, we'll be opening up walls, taking down all the ceilings, redoing all the piping. I mean, that's part of the reason, that's part of the difficulty of doing all this is you need to do it zone by zone because replacing that infrastructure is so intensive.
But it's a relatively easy thing to do, right? Not easy. No, I mean, it makes more sense because you can connect as you go along.
Yeah, so what we would end up doing is in the first phases, we would establish our, sort of call it our new plants in the building and get ourselves some amount of distribution in the building, like in a shaft up the floors. And then as we touch spaces, we will tap into that and take, as we renovate a space, we'll take the old system out, put the new system in and work piece by piece by piece. So at the beginning of the project, the existing system will still be doing most of the work in the building and the new will be doing a little. And as we renovate, that's gonna shift until the last phase when the existing system is doing just a tiny bit of work and we're almost entirely on the new. And then once we're done, then the existing system is totally offline.
So I have just one more question so I can visualize. So where are these new parts going to be installed in the building?
So fortunately, the infrastructure is not substantial in size. We'll be able to fit that in both the existing mechanical rooms as well as probably the basement spaces of, these buildings.
That's what.
And it would be distributed, so we might have a boiler per building, or maybe there's 2 in that building. And then the air source heat pumps have smaller outdoor units. There are already some existing on the campus that we would keep probably to the back of the building, not in the front entry where you'd see them. And those live on the roof or, on the sides of the building. And everything else stays within the ceiling cavities themselves and shafts of the building.
Thank you.
That's the most sort of complicated part. The plumbing systems we've talked about before are all fairly dated and need to be replaced, and we would make those revision or those edits as we go, replacing that work. Same thing with fire alarm electrical work. The existing main systems on the campus are in great shape because there's a main switchboard, we have the full building generator. It's all the sub panels throughout the building that, again, as we touch zones, we will replace those things and slowly end up touching all the spaces. That lends itself more easy to phasing.
Yeah.
Mechanical is the most challenging part.
Main electrical service was replaced 4 years ago?
4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so it's all brand new switchgear, all motor control centers, it's like,
We're not touching that.
yeah, it's all, and the generator is, it's a really nice generator. And it can cover the entire building, and then some. So we're more than we're served by the existing system.
It's just
Thank
all,
you for doing that work.
We're anticipating this.
Yes. So, the current system just has one set of pipes, right?
Right.
In the winter, heat goes through it, and then at some magical date, it switches to cooling.
correct. You can only do heating or cooling. You can't do both.
So we get rid of that,
You get rid of the cooling aspect
yes,
of that.
and keep the heat.
The heating aspect, our biggest problem is cold water running through pipes.
Yes,
Any insulation
condensation.
is exposed, how much do you generate for liquid? I mean, the chief lives it.
We live it.
Yeah, you live it. Everything from the top comes down and drains into their space.
Right.
So, but hot water doesn't do that.
Right, so we get rid of all that condensation,
Correct.
which is great.
And with air source heat pumps, you can do simultaneous heating and cooling. So if this room needs heat, you'll get heat, and if the room next door needs cooling, you get the cooling. So you'll be able a lot more
More
nuanced
flexible.
control.
Yeah, more efficient.
And it's not one big system, it's distributed, so if we need to work on something, we're not shutting the entire building down.
It's much smaller,
Yeah.
a lot more granular control.
That's good. That's good.
Peter, would you control that?
Yes. What do you mean, I'm sorry, what do you mean by control? What do you mean by-
Well, you can't just have any staff person decide, oh, I'm cold, I'm gonna turn the heat up.
We have we'll have bands of operation, so within a band, staff could adjust it.
They can adjust it a few temperatures either one way or another, but that's it.
Yeah.
So, but then we have.
But we'll have monitors, we'll have centralized monitors where we can see if there's issues.
Yeah.
Other questions, Sue?
Yeah, I just thought it was what are the conditions of the windows as far as the heat and cool exchange? You know what I mean? You can get different rated windows, right?
Correct. So what we've planned to do is the 63 building, police department building, those windows on storefront are all fairly new because that was done as part of all that facade work.
What was new?
Those windows you see right through the window, the black,
dark gray.
the dark gray.
Those are all new.
Those were
All
done.
around the corner on the front side as well.
So those would all remain. Those are in fine shape. But the windows in this building and the Cybele
Windows
building,
in this
Right
space right
here?
here, you see this? Yeah,
Yeah.
those would get replaced.
those would be replaced. So we've accounted for that in the construction estimate, saying that as we work, those windows would all be replaced. That's the time to do that kind of work.
Okay, so that's an engineering overview. Any other questions before we move on? MEP approach update. Oh, concept C revisions of the.
That's what
we went through that.
Yes, so we've gone through, I think, all these sort of design and building updates that we intended.
Yeah, so what's next is we have the draft public feedback process in your packet. You'll see a draft frequently asked questions. We tried to answer a lot of questions that we've heard from you, we've heard from the public along the way. If you have any feedback on that, please sort of mark it up, send it back to us. Happy to sort of make those revisions, and we hope to continue to add to that as we go. Our goal is to sort of publish this online. We'll have it when we're out in some of these informational sessions. We have dates to be at the farmer's market, and what you see here is we're gonna have the easels and the designs up. We're gonna have copies of the plans, copies of the presentation that went to the council for the work session and the frequently asked questions. There'll also be a scan code where folks can give us some feedback in a survey, and I think Richard can pull that up on the screen as well. Simple questions that we typically ask around things to get some feedback from folks.
Just a note, Kate, Councilor Cook has raised her hand.
Thank you.
Councilor.
Councilor Cook?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can now, yeah.
Sorry, I've been trying to answer questions a while ago, and for some reason, it just wouldn't let me join this panel. I did have a few questions on the heating system, and I'm sorry that it's delayed and you guys have moved on, but I was trying very hard to get attention.
Go ahead.
John wouldn't let you on.
So blame it on me.
It's Peter's fault.
It's hard, I'm driving in Pennsylvania, so I'm not, it's a little challenging.
Go ahead with your
You shut
question.
her off
I would
again?
like to address specifically the fourth floor renovation. Have we considered alternative heating, cooling arrangements for the fourth floor that would allow us to do a less invasive renovation there, saving some money on the fourth floor as far as walls, moving walls, et cetera?
Well, so on the fourth floor, specifically in the 63 building, we're not proposing to remove much of the way of walls, but whatever work we do to address the ventilation issues and to get to the existing piping in the walls, we're gonna need to open up walls and take down ceilings to a certain extent. So we'll be as minimal as we can, but it will require getting into spaces. I mean, that's the difficulty with doing work to date, is while we could get in some walls, the existing infrastructure, the mains and stuff could never really be touched, which is why they're, dating back to the 60s. So we will need to get into those areas, but we're not proposing to move walls around much, and we'll keep it as minimal as we can. But we do need to get in there and open things
And a
up.
lot of the heating systems are in the suspended ceiling space.
Correct.
So it's in the plenum that is accessible, and it doesn't require a lot of destructive access.
Okay. All right, yes. My question is more like, can we just abandon what's in the fourth floor and come from above with heating, cooling systems that is on the roof, so that we don't have to touch anything and mess with walls?
So, Councilor, where we're feeding it from will not really change significantly. And, you know, obviously, as part of the final design, we'll look at the ways to minimize disruption, to minimize cost. But no matter what, you're gonna need to access, whether you're coming in from the roof, which has its challenges, or whether you're coming in from below, there are gonna be penetrations in floors and ceilings, and to be able to do that. So coming through the ceiling would not necessarily reduce the costs. It may actually increase the costs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Counselor?
Now that I'm on, I will reserve and ask things later.
Okay, sounds good. So Carl, you were talking about farmer's market?
Yeah, so the farmer's market, and here's a copy of the a quick survey that we have out here. We thought we would add the presentation, an image of what it looks like, and a little description of what it is, so folks that click on it actually get a little bit of a context for it. And then if you scroll down, it's really about how do you rate it, who are you, and then what do you like, what could be improved, and anything else we want to know, which is typically the same type of survey we've used for the master plan, other projects, where it's like, give us some feedback. What's working? What would you like to see differently? And start getting that feedback. Our goal is to be at the farmer's market this Saturday, and then on the 29th. If any of you would like to join us, you're welcome to. We'll have this set up. We'll have the pictures. We'll have copies of the plans and the QR code for folks to access the survey. After this meeting, we'll wait for a little bit of feedback from any of you on the frequently asked questions or the survey, and we'll publish that live on the website as well, so that way folks will be able to start providing some feedback. And then we thought we'd also take the renderings and concepts and put them out in the entryway with the QR code there, so folks can fill out the survey as well, have some information out there on a table out there as well. And then we actually are scheduled to go meet with Connors Cottage as well for an informational session, to meet with all of them, just to describe the project, to let them see the viewscape, and even from Connors Cottage, where it really is minimal impact in general, but from their views, even on the first floor, very minimal impact at all from the viewscape, just to make sure that we get out and let them see the plans, ask any questions, and provide any feedback as well. So we're scheduled to do that next week as well.
Who's going to the farmer's market?
I'll be there.
The architects?
Yep, I think I invited you to those, right?
I have to look and see.
Yeah. So, and then some staff will be there as well. And any members of the committee who'd like to come.
As far as the public is concerned, the way I see it anyways, there are really, there's multiple areas, but there's two major areas that, you know, can be addressed. One obviously is, I'll use the term optics. You know, what does it look like? How does it impact people's views, etc. And I think we need to be able to, you know, address that, and I'm sure you can do that very, you know, very well, very easily. And I think, frankly, we've complained a lot about the fact of what we dealt with in the past and how that has impacted some of the stuff we're doing now. I think on one side, what we're doing now is so less intensive optically than what was shown before that it should be a fairly easy sell. The second area has to do with what I'll call the financial, the costs. Some people stick on costs, some people deal with optics. I think there are two areas that you addressed at the work session with the council that I think are you know, we need to stress, and one of them has to do with the fact is that what we've tried to do is to reduce the amount of new construction. And why are we doing that? Because it costs half of what renovation does. So one of the things with cost-wise, you know, we can show that one of the earlier plans had 30,000 square feet of new construction. We've brought it down to, you know, first of all, it works better. And then secondly, it's a way to be responsive and cost-wise. And then the second thing, which, you know, we've all talked about, is the fact that if we look at what the city wants to accomplish, what they wanted to accomplish in the past and what they want to accomplish now. In the past, they wanted to redo the police station, which, you know, we used the $42 million figure. We know the city needed to do the HVAC and all of that, you know, stuff, and that was, as you showed, $10 to $12 million. So really what we're giving the city, or what the city is getting, is for not much more than what was going to be allocated and leave us in the same space, an improved infrastructure all the way around. So it's money that's being well spent. So I think if we can tell those two stories, the optics and the financial piece of it, you know, that's really where we need to go.
Sue, you had your hand.
I just have two quick ones.
Agreed.
I just have two quick. On the survey, and I've always disagreed on any kind of survey, the question that says, what would you like to see improved? I feel like that's a negative. I think you're telling people that not that it's bad design, but I think it's just not a positive look forward, like, or we welcome your thoughts on the plan. I don't know how to word it, but I just think, what
could be changed?
Well, that's what I'm trying to think of before what could be changed?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
What should be changed, or what, you know, what would you change? Or-
do you see any changes or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid point.
If there's a consensus, we can change that to what could be changed, or what would you change, what would you change?
What would you change?
Empower them a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's
And
see.
my second
Yes,
question,
Sue.
Real, is from the newspaper article, Seacoast Online, did the city hall get a lot of feedback? Or does anybody even
We
know?
got some, and I think it's, you know, a couple emails came through, and then I think I've talked to more people than what we've seen as emails come through, but I think the council might have gotten some feedback as well.
Let's see.
I can answer Sue's question from or just from me as one of 9 counselors.
Yeah.
The feedback I'm getting is it's still too expensive, and only 1 or 2 people are concerned about the Sallyport from a view perspective. That feedback is vastly reduced.
Okay.
The finances is a concern. Actually, I would say more so than it was 2 years ago, for whatever reason, probably because of the revaluation and taxes and everything else. The one thing we could do, and this is more a question for the finance department, but it's with a project that's phased like this, and with like the middle school bond rolling off, it starts to become confusing to see what the effect on the tax rate is. So I think if we had some kind of financial, you know, poster board like that that said, this is the expected increase in taxes year by year for the next 10 years, that's something people can kind of see and appreciate. Okay, this year it's going to cost me $25 more in taxes. This year it's going to cost me $75 more in taxes. I mean, fundamentally, I think that's the number people want to know. And the more transparent we are with it, like these are the real costs, the more support we'll get. I think the other thing,
So
and this is kind of come up.
if I could, I would recommend presenting it as what the project impact to taxes would be, instead of what you can expect for taxes. Because there's
Yeah,
all,
oh, yes,
there's
yeah, that's what
things
I-
out there.
He was saying
The
one thing
project
and
is-
and
yeah.
showing another.
It's gonna be,
Got it.
your chunk this year, because of this project, is probably gonna be this number if you're, and we'll do it in the median price single family home, because that's what we always do. The last thing I would say is, I think somebody posted about this, an architect, but you know, buildings have a life expectancy. And whatever it is, 100 years, this building is running out of life, and we have to do something. And I think, you know, we might get a little bit confused. People are like, oh, it's gonna be easier to go register your car. And quite frankly, a lot of people probably gonna be like, okay, yes, but I don't wanna pay more money every year to make it easier to register my car. That's like a nice to have, not a reason to do the project. And I don't think we wanna lose sight of the fact that the project has to be done, because fundamentally the building's just old and worn out and something has to be done. We're not doing this big giant project so we can make the front steps a little easier to use, or the clerk's office a little bit more streamlined. We're doing those things because we have to do all this other stuff anyway. and we can kind of do that essentially for free.
In other words, there's also a great cost to doing nothing.
Yes,
Right?
Yes.
So when we talk to taxpayers about what it's going to, how much this will cost, somehow you have to for that to be a complete message, you have to also include, if we don't do anything, we will also incur great costs because the repairs over time.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
does
Cameron.
JSA or is there someone else, sorry guys, but this Cameron, is there a way for us to get a ballpark number of, if we do nothing and this building is derelict in, I don't know what the useful life is, you guys would know better than I would, Peter and Joe, but whatever that time frame is, all right, then we gotta demo the whole thing and build it from the ground up. How much more is that gonna cost then? And then can we kind of give some directional, I understand it's estimation and I understand it's somewhat speculative, but to help people get a directional understanding of how much it will hurt if there is nothing done, because I think creating that, you know, context for the project gives people some perspective around why this is urgent and why this needs to be addressed.
Let's see, Peter, then Buzz.
One of the things, Carl, that you may want to do is there is still a letter writer who is much more in favor of a brand new police station. Somehow, make sure you combine the things together. That estimate for an off-site thing was 70 million. Plus Mr. Rice's estimate of 10 to 12 million on fixes that would have to be made here, electrical and HVAC. We're at 82, that's at 82 million. As opposed to 58 million to get everything done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Buzz?
To pick up on what Councilor Bagley was saying, I think the public wants answer to two questions in terms of finance. Can the city afford it? That is, you know, they want to know the yes or no answer to that. They don't particularly care about when the middle school bond is, you know, all the details of it. And the other question is, what's it going to cost me? And if we can, in the FAQs or as we talk to people at the farmer's market, if we have crisp answers to those two things, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I would also add, compare it to other major capital projects. The high school in its day was 60 million. It would no doubt be 70 or 80 today. The middle school ended up, 53 million, I think? 40 something?
I think so.
Today would easily be 60, 70, 80. So
The treatment plant was close to $100 million at Pierce Island.
So when you compare it to those major capital upgrades that you have to do, because you have to have a high school that functions, this is 58 is a lot of value for the money.
Thanks, Counselor. And just to, I was late because the blood donation wasn't going as fast as I'd like it to, but I listened to the chief's comments, and who was a little bit more circumspect, and then Commissioner Scher's, which is, you know, we're not really getting what we want, but we can live with it. And I think that's actually a good message. You know, to the former mayor's point, you know, we're always going to have residents that are thinking that we're not spending enough, or we're spending too much, or that we need to dedicate to a purpose-built police station. We're not going to change certain people's minds on that, I don't think. But if, as a committee and a community, we're all feel like we're given a little bit, we're not all getting exactly what we want, but we're getting something that works for everybody and is fiscally responsible and is relatively nice to look at. I think if we all feel like we've all come together and come up with a project that, I mean, the mayor said 80%, if we get 80% support on a day, we can give away free ice cream, I'd be surprised. So I don't know that we'll reach that number, but I think that if we're presenting it this, hopefully at the end of the day, unanimously to the council, and it's in the spirit of everybody kind of made compromises and everything was adjusted so that everybody, you know, with the changes to the clerk's office, right? Like, until we spoke with them, or until you guys spoke with them, I guess we didn't know that there were certain things that had to be moved. And the whole project's gonna be like that. As it moves forward, we're gonna run into things that we couldn't expect or we couldn't predict, or something changes. And I think if that message to the community is like, listen, this isn't And none of it's gonna be absolutely perfect, but it's everybody coming together and doing the best they can for the city. And the people on this committee, who I think have done a lot of work, no offense, Cameron, as well as all the architects and the professionals, have really taken the time as people that love the city and studied the plans and come up with a path forward. You know, most of the community is gonna trust us to have done what's in the best interest of the city as a whole. And that's gonna mean that the chief is, you know, we can definitely live with this, not this is, you know, the nicest police station in the country.
Renee?
The one word he just said was trust.
Yeah.
And that's so important for here and then for the public.
Sue?
Real quick, the finances, I don't know about the rest of you, but I thought when Nathan got up and really explained what was gonna happen, you know, physically, what was gonna come and go and everything, it just made me feel a whole lot better. Because I could see what, yeah, we can afford it because this is already in the works and we're gonna fit in between. So I think your idea of having some sort of, it doesn't have to be visual, but some sort of comment, because I don't think people like, oh yeah, we can afford it. I think they wanna know why we can afford it.
Spell it
In
out.
a simple form, say this is what's gonna happen and yeah, so we can. We're not just throwing on another bond. And the other thing about how long this building's gonna last is online has really affected how we do business here. And I think it's really gonna keep impacting it. So I don't know if that's has played anything into any kind of vision and how long and what have you, because all the things we used to do all the time, when you had to go to City Hall to do everything. Now I get emails reminding me, oh, your car or the taxes or this or that, and you can just about do anything online now. So I don't know what the percentage is for the city of how many people are taking advantage of that. You know, how, or if we need to consider that. I mean, last year, 1,000 people came in, this year only 500, and, you know, more people increased online use. I don't know if that's an impact in any of this.
And can I just say, I always wonder if I'm being scammed. So it makes me very nervous to do it online, because I'm thinking, am I doing the right thing? I don't know.
But that's us, my
I know,
daughter's
I
in her
know.
40s,
I know.
like everything.
I know, just makes me
No,
nervous.
but I
Yeah.
agree with you, I think twice about it. And the other thing, I did go to the police commission to see if there was gonna be a big discussion. It took them less than 3 minutes to say, yes, we're fine with it, and that was it. So there wasn't even any discussion, so I felt confident.
2.5 years and it took 3 minutes.
Yeah, and I felt, but I talked to someone afterwards on the commission, and I felt comfortable that, you know, they feel comfortable with the whole, it felt positive.
The important part of that is, it is gonna take a unified approach when it gets to the council, that this committee, along with the police department, along with the commission, supports the plan. And as opposed to, well, we really don't like it type of thing. You know, it's important, because if everybody isn't together, it may not happen.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and the fact is that I can't speak for, you know, anyone else, but I know when I go into a project like this, I have a vision, like most people do. And I've been involved with enough of these things to hopefully recognize that I believe that the collective input of, you know, as Andrew's saying, the collective input of people who care about Portsmouth, who want to do the right thing, I have found through the years that input, frankly, you know, trumps what my vision might be. Because I think that, you know, everybody brings different perspectives to the table. I bring a certain perspective. But by bringing everybody's perspective to the table and being respectful of that perspective, we'll end up with a good product. And I think that's where we've, you know, I will tell you that when I first got involved with this, when Sean and I, you know, were first asked to get involved, I had a picture of my mind of what the police station would look like. Is this gonna look like what I had in my mind then? No. Is it better than what I had in my mind? Yes. And I think that that's, picking up on what Peter's saying. We need to kind of forget about our own perspectives and recognize that we're benefiting from the input of other people who do care and have their own perspectives. And together, collectively, we can go to the city and say, as Peter has said, as Andrew has said, and we can go to the city and say, we've gotten together and this is what we believe is the best thing for the city, and hopefully they'll trust us. So.
Okay, well, I want to make sure we get time for public comment. Next steps and meetings, Carl?
Yep, so,
Councilor Tabor,
Yes, Kate.
Councilor Tabor,
Yes.
Councilor Cook, I had 2 quick things. I think that those next estimates are really critical, especially around soft costs, because we have a pretty significant escalator in there now at 25%. So I think that if we find ways to reduce some of that 25% estimate, that will help even more, because I think there is some concern around the financials still. And I also think that if there's anything that we can find, for example, increase heating and cooling efficiency and how we can save the city X amount of dollars per year in heating and cooling by helping to close the envelope or putting in new HVAC, that would be beneficial if we could share that kind of information with the public as well.
Okay.
so I think in addition to the refined finances, we'll also make sure we connect with Nathan to have sort of a projection out over time as well. So that way you're not only looking at the refined numbers, but you're looking at that sort of projection over time. We'll make sure that's there. And the next meeting is the 9th, which gives us, of September, which gives us lots of time to do that work, because there's a lot of work to be done to refine that between now and then.
Do we expect to have the estimating process done by then, or is that more deeper into the fall?
No, our anticipation is to bring updated revised numbers for our September 9th meeting.
The one thing I would.
Would it be possible for that meeting on the 9th to have some kind of reaction from the school department, whether or not they are on board?
Yes, that, they're gonna discuss it.
They're discussing it in September, and so, yep.
Well, it would be nice if at our,
Have an update.
yeah, either that or let's push it to the 16th or something if they need more time to.
We did have a letter from the superintendent in one of our packets.
Yes, that outlined the process and what they were looking at,
Yeah.
but it's,
And they would come back by September with their answers, so I think that should be in before we make the final determination.
Okay. So that's the upcoming meetings?
So what I'm hearing is if we don't have that, staff can come back to us and say, we'd like to postpone this meeting for a week or 2 weeks or something like that. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I guess does the committee want to move that? I think we'll have an update either way on the 9th. Because they're working on it actively now, so we'll have some sort of an update for the
Okay,
9th.
but if you could check with them to see if they would be back to you before September 9th. And if they say no, it'll be
Just
the
move it.
15th, then let's push our meeting off till the 16th.
Why don't we just to be respectful of everyone's time, why don't we leave it up to the chairs and then come back to us if we feel there's a need to move it?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
That's right. We'll stay in touch and.
Mr. Chair, just to Councilor Cook's question relative to refining some of the estimates and contingency numbers. Until we get into the design more, it's really not appropriate to reduce some of those contingency numbers, because the design is what will define those contingencies cover the unknown, the connecting tissue of the project that you're not really aware of until you get into the final design. we are feasibility, we're at space planning, we're at, you know, very start of this process. So I wouldn't wanna reduce those numbers to lower the estimate to a point where it doesn't have those things in place, and then have to come back and say, oh, we have to inflate the costs more because we've done that additional work. So we'll rely on the professional judgment of the estimators for where we're at with the design, but I would just caution, not having those contingencies in place and not having those soft costs in place, because they cover those unknowns. And which, in a building like this, there are a ton of unknowns.
Isn't it true though, Peter, once you come up with the final plans, you will still plan for a contingency
Correct.
of up to
Yeah.
usually 10%.
Yeah.
So that,
Depends on how comfortable we are with the design, but
Well, you know, in the middle school cases instructed, there were late surprises in that process with the foundations.
Yes.
And we don't, you know, we want to have all surprises be pleasant ones.
yep, that's right, reducing costs.
A couple questions looking forward. Do we have a sense yet of when the final plans are gonna be presented for the city council for a vote on the bonding? I mean, just loosely, are we talking in the fall?
What year?
When you say final plans, are you talking final design plans or
No, I'm
final-
talking about
concept.
whatever is enough so that the city council can vote to bond the project. I don't know what the right term is, whether it's final plan or final concept or whatever. But do we have a sense of, right now, what that date will be? And second is the question of what's the lifespan of this committee? Once it's bonded, are we done?
Well, and Councilor Cook can chime in here. I think Councilor Cook has correctly said that you really need to approve the whole thing.
Right.
As opposed to piecemeal. So I think that gets into some tactical questions for the council. What kind of vote do we want to put before the council that authorizes the whole project?
Has the council talked about that, or?
We haven't.
So, I would say the short answer is no. We can't commit future councils to spending. So if we're not ready to bond for something, then future councils could not bond it, so to speak. So we're getting into like kind of some of the stuff we don't need to cover in this meeting, but there's no way we can commit the full project as this council, because of just the way the sequencing works. Getting off the ground will probably happen, if I had to guess, sometime late fall. We'll have a vote at the council level to
Staff may know.
say it's going forward at some level.
you at least could bond the cost, the design cost for architectural.
Yeah.
So that's a commitment.
Right.
You know, we'll say that's 5 million.
You're already doing that at the next council meeting to bond the additional for the
$2.8 million
$2.8 million more
to
dollars towards that.
yeah.
And I would
let's get into the
say
project.
this council will probably at least, if everything goes forward, bond at least close to 30 million. We're authorized to bond, but I wouldn't think we'd end up bonding the whole.
So I guess my question is, when will that, let's say this council will bond 30 million.
Yeah.
When do we think that's gonna happen?
Well, he's impatient, Carl.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
So the whole project is currently in the CIP budget for approval next June. I mean, we approved the CIP earlier in the year, but the budget doesn't get approved until June of 2027. That's when the final approval comes through. And that approval gives the city the authorization to bond it, even if they don't bond it immediately, they bond it over multiple years, which is, I think, the current plan in place.
It only gives the fiscal year to be bonded, and then once the bond actually goes out to issuance, the council has to approve again. There's no way this council can approve bonding that's gonna happen 5 years from now. It's just not allowed.
You're asking what the procedure is going forward.
I think you need to check on that.
So,
Because I think you could go through, have a first reading on a bond issue up to X number of dollars and then authorize a different vote to do the design.
Well, I think that's what he's trying to find out.
Yeah.
What's the procedure?
I guess, yeah,
Why
my
would you-
question.
Let Kyle address it.
We'll outline the process. The goal was to bring the project back in the fall for the council to approve. And then there'll be a series of things that this council, other councils might have to do on the bonding to make it all happen. But the goal was to bring this project and concept back to the council in the fall to be approved. And we'll work through the details of the,
And subsequent to
how all the votes work and the CIP and everything else. And it's a little bit interesting because you do work and then the bond authorizations happen and in phases. So but we'll outline that all up for the
But the
9th.
design portion is coming up.
On the 8th,
This,
the 3rd.
this Monday.
Yeah, this
That
Monday.
they're voting to approve the $2.8
first
million
step.
that gets us through the real detailed design.
That's the first step.
Councilor Cook, did you have more you wanted to add?
Yes, I mean, I'm just saying that in the CIP budget, we have it set for approval in 1 year, in this coming year. And then it's bonded over multiple years, and the bonds always do come back for some approval, but once it's approved in the CIP budget, it's then essentially approved. And then council actually is right, we can't tie another council to approving the bond, but the project will have already been approved, is my understanding.
The CIP is a planning document. When we approve it, we're authorizing the city to bond the next fiscal year's projects, even though it goes out 7 years?
If
6
I-
years.
if I could-
But everything that's a post year out has not been approved. And then when it actually goes to bond, even after the CIP is approved, we still have to approve that bond.
If I
Director
could.
Rice.
That's
So
not what he said.
what happens is, if I could, the CIP is a planning document. It identifies a cost that the council in concept is accepting and knows that it's there. We put it into our budget plan and project out the capital impacts. It is not an authorization. We have a separate authorization of that item, which is what's coming forward on Monday. We're doing an authorization for a number of CIP projects that are there. So until the council authorizes the bonding, that is not, we cannot expend monies on it. Once it's authorized and we get a final budget number for the design, we typically go back to council and get a bond, a final bond authorization, clarify it. And we go to bond that document, that project. So there's three steps that allow council to weigh in each time to refine it if the council decides to refine it during those times.
So I didn't mean to raise this level of complication. Well, it's because
It's a good issue.
I'm not a finance guy and I don't know the right answers. Two things. One, it being approved in the CIP, in my experience, means nothing because the 42 million for the original police station that we talked about was in the CIP, and because there was not going to be the votes for the bonding, at the 2/3 votes for the bonding, it didn't go forward. So, and I understand
But it didn't go away, and that's why.
No, I understand that. But the focus of my question, and I understand this project's more complicated because it's sequenced, and that's, so the bonding question is not simple as that original approach. My question is, so when do we know, to focus on the police department, when do we know this is gonna happen? When is it that the city council votes on something so we know that the police station is gonna happen? I'm curious what that date is.
We'll outline all the steps necessary for the next meeting too, so you see that plan as well.
Let's do that.
Yep. We'll outline that.
Let's defer that until
Yeah.
the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl.
Yes.
Renee had her hand up.
Renee.
So you will approve 2.8 million for,
Monday.
to do what?
So it takes this project from concept to biddable documents that have all the real detailed design to make sure you have everything in place to go out to bid.
Okay, that's 2.8 million.
That's first reading.
That you will write a check and that they will get because of all the work that they have. No, we need to get this. You guys will get it. But there's a possibility that it doesn't happen. right? There's a possibility that this doesn't happen. So we have written a check for $3 million that you are going to give, and they deserve it. Because
So
we've all been sitting here for 2.5 years.
We don't, so here's how it works. They get paid for what they do work on. It's not a lump
Right.
sum, so it's a, you know, it's cost.
Pay as you go.
Pay as you go, cost plus expenses.
Got it.
So, you know, they would love to get a check, for that amount up front.
That's what
But we don't do it that way.
Okay.
So we will not, if things change, we will pull the plug on it. They don't get the money.
Okay.
They get paid what
All
they
right.
worked on.
Just,
But that has nothing to do with the, how much are we talking about? 58 million, that's separate from,
So-
okay.
No, it's part of it.
It's part of
It's
it.
part of the
So then it
58.
goes down to
2.8 is
55 million.
It's
instead
those
of
soft costs, it's part of the soft costs.
Thank you, all right, that's good, okay.
Peter,
At some point, I think this committee would hope
Hold on.
that the city council would vote to move forward on the $58 million project. Okay? Because if they don't, it may not happen.
That's what, my following question is, all right, because everybody wants a definite date for your police station to start, and that's not gonna happen right away. And my question is, all right, who gets the design? We vote for the 2.8 and then it goes out to design. Does it go out to?
JSA was selected to do the design.
Okay, well, that's it. That's what I
So we don't know
assumed, but
who's
I
gonna do
didn't
the-
wanna assume it.
We don't know who would do the work.
We don't know who's gonna do the construction.
That's okay, but what happens if they come back with a final design who has to approve that? The city council?
No.
So we will, for the next meeting, we'll
I just-
outline all the steps there that lead to the
We're getting ahead
council
of ourselves.
approving
Yes.
a final concept that gets this project off the ground, and we'll outline whatever bonding votes have to happen in order to make that happen along the way. I think the goal has always been to have concepts come from this committee to go back to the city council to be voted on to approve, which starts everything in motion and may refine the CIP or other things. So we'll clarify that, all the steps in that process, but the goal is, I think the goal has always been that this committee presents back its final findings and then the council would vote.
okay, I'm gonna move us along. Public comment. Anybody have public comment? All right. Any further business for the committee?
Councilor Tabor,
Yes.
I promised Mary Lou McElwain that I would share her concerns about the Valley Port out front of the building. So, she had contacted me, wasn't her, but she wanted to make sure for public comment that I share her concern, and that she does not like the design of the Valley Port out front.
Yes. Okay, duly noted, and I think she also wanted to be sure that that design was made public, and I think we've heard how that's gonna happen. So, any other business for the committee?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I can